The O'Reilly Factor is on. Tonight, will Somalia be America's next military target? And why are some film critics crying racism over the movie Black Hawk Down, which deals with Somali warlords? We'll take a look. The FBI continues to totter. Why is that once elite agency in so much trouble? And Geraldo Rivera is back from Afghanistan. We'll ask him about the controversy over his reporting. Caution, you're about to enter a no-spin zone. Factor begins in 90 seconds.
Fox News Live, I'm Kiran Chetra. U.S. warplanes were back in action today in Afghanistan after being idle for several days. Their target was in a coastal region south of the Tora Bora cave complex.
We conducted strikes between 10 and 11 o'clock our time in Afghanistan on a leadership compound that was fairly extensive compound, had a base camp, a training facility, and some cave pieces to that, fairly close to the Pakistani border, matter of fact. And that was the last strike in the last several days. It was conducted by B-1 bombers, by Navy F-18 aircraft, and AC-130 gunships.
Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld is close to recommending American Taliban fighter John Walker be handed over to U.S. authorities. Walker is being held on a U.S. ship in the Arabian Sea. Sources say Rumsfeld will soon present the president with a plan on how to conduct the trials of suspected Taliban and al-Qaeda terrorists. Rumsfeld also confirming today that some Taliban and al-Qaeda prisoners will be moved to the U.S. naval base in Cuba. The U.S. is holding 248 prisoners. There's no word on how many of them will go to that base. That is our update for now. We'll be back again for you coming up at the bottom of the hour. Stay tuned. The O'Reilly Factor is coming up next here on Fox News.
Hi, I'm Bill O'Reilly. Thanks for watching us tonight. Now, here's how naive I am. I thought I'd come back from Christmas vacation and things would have calmed down a little. You know, the Factor's been getting an enormous amount of press, but I figured, hey, enough's enough. I'll get back. Things will be calm. Wrong. All kinds of articles are coming out about us, most of them calling me names, which is fine. My thought is, if you can't outthink us, you'll out-name call us. I guess I can understand the passion surrounding the Factor. Last night's program was a good example, and that's the subject of this evening's Talking Points memo. At issue, homeless people sleeping in the doorways of expensive neighborhoods. A federal judge has ruled that's okay. We interviewed Presbyterian Minister Thomas Toole, who is working one-on-one with the homeless. Jane Reeb, who lives in Atlanta, did not like that interview. Bill, I thought you were a gentleman, but now I see you as an insensitive, unkind elitist. Mother Teresa would be sickened by your arrogant disrespect for victims of unnoticed tragedies. So am I. You know what makes me ill, Ms. Reeb? Foolish public policy and watching the taxpayers' money being wasted. I get real queasy about that. The homeless problem, and indeed the poverty situation in America, will never be solved until people like you who care realize that sympathy does not turn lives around. Discipline and well-thought-out remedies do that. Americans who choose to act irresponsibly will most likely fail in our competitive system. The problem is their children suffer right along with them. If the government really cared about the poor, which it does not, it would require people who cannot feed and house themselves for whatever reason to enter into therapeutic facilities paid for by the taxpayer and confront their problems under professional supervision. If a citizen refused to do that, then the vagrancy and public nuisance laws should be applied against him or her. No American has the right to intrude on the public safety or the public good. Fouling the streets is not a right. Public intoxication is not a right. Using government assistance to buy drugs or alcohol is downright criminal. America is a great country, and hundreds of thousands of immigrants come here each year and immediately join the workforce. The tens of thousands of people who can't do that, again, for whatever reason, deserve a chance to turn things around. But if they refuse to embrace the public good, refuse to help themselves, then the government has a right to isolate them. That's not touchy-feely. It's not what the pseudo-intellectuals want to hear, but it's fair and humane. And the sooner Americans realize that, the sooner something might be done about persistent poverty and addiction. And that's the memo. Now for the top story tonight. Will Somalia be next? A number of reports are saying that the U.S. military may begin bombing al-Qaeda facilities in that out-of-control African country, which is run by warlords and which fought with America from '92 to '94. Back then, the United Nations was trying to get food to starving Somalis, and the warlord Mohammed Aidid began killing the UN people. The American military went in and a brutal firefight erupted, which is the subject of the new film Black Hawk Down. With us now is the film critic for Entertainment Weekly magazine, Owen Gleiberman, who says Black Hawk Down is a racist exercise. Really?
Well, Bill, I think it has an element of racism in it. I mean, the first thing to say about Black Hawk Down is that it is not a very good movie. I think it's been terribly overrated. It's basically a 2.5-hour battle scene in which the Americans go in. There's no characterization at all. And after a while, you need something more than a battle scene. I mean, Spielberg's was only 40 minutes long at the start of Saving Private Ryan. And I think just the film fails to bring its characters to life. But when it becomes, hold on a second, it becomes monotonous after a while. One of the elements of the film's dramatic failure is that the Somalis are just this anonymous horde coming at the Americans. We never see them as characters at all. It's like after a while being in a video game or Night of the Living Dead.
But here's my problem with that. We have this book, Black Hawk Down, which is based upon fact, all right? It's a factual book. It's not made up.
The book is very good.
Right, and it goes right down the line, but it doesn't give the Somali point of view because...
That's not true.
No, it is. If you read the book, he couldn't interview any of the Somalis because he would have been shot. This is Bowden, the guy who wrote it.
Right.
He didn't have access to Aidid and all these guys. He had no access to them. So he basically told the story through the eyes of the American servicemen who were in the middle of the firefight. Now we have, in real life, we're going to have to confront the Somalis again.
Right.
Because they're harboring al-Qaeda terrorists, so the U.S. government is telling us. My point is, just like the Afghan war, where we really don't see the war through the eyes of the Taliban. See, we're not reporting through their eyes because they'll shoot us. I don't think that it's racist, and I haven't seen the movie, but because I don't know about Aidid and his slugs, what they're thinking, why would I be offended by
Well, first of all, to make the analogy to the current war that we're in, I think America at large in the last 3 months has had a deep desire to have some background about why these terrorists are doing what they're doing. That's not the same as justifying it, but it's filling it in. Wars exist in context, historical context. We know nothing about the Somalis in this movie, and the result is that they really become cannon fodder. There are reasons why these warlords and their armies were coming at the Americans. There were raids that were talked about in the book that are left out of the movie, and I think if you had some of that context, it would have made it...
Why would that be racist rather than bad filmmaking? See, look, the bad guys then and now in Somalia are black.
Well,
they're black, and they're bad guys.
What I'm saying is that mostly it is bad filmmaking, but that I think there's an element of racism in this bad filmmaking, because if you saw the movie, for 2.5 hours, we watch these
black
Somalis
guys getting killed,
being mowed down.
Right.
And because no justification and no background and no context is given for these events that happened very recently. I mean, we're not talking about an abstract movie.
We're
talking about a series of events that were in the news.
That are based on true.
And because all of this context is left out, what the film...
If there was a legitimate context, Mr. Gleiberman, a legitimate context in the sense that the filmmakers left out something of importance to history about the Somalis,
well,
then I would agree with you. But the Somali warlord Aidid was a murderous thug.
I'm not talking about the warlords. I'm talking...
But that's who controlled this battle.
I agree with you on that. But what the movie shows you is not simply... It doesn't ever show you the warlords. What it shows you is the armies that followed him.
Yeah,
and what you want to know is why these armies followed him with such fanaticism. In leaving out 5 seconds of explanation about that, what the movie says implicitly is that these people are dying like cannon fodder because they deserve to die, because on some level, maybe they're a lower order. But there's a colonial view.
In history, they did deserve to die. See, here's where you and I are parting. They did deserve to die. They starved their own people. They were, most of them, high on this cat drug, okay, taking orders by a guy who was, a villain, not to the extent of Osama bin Laden, but close, trained by Osama bin Laden. These people who attacked the American Special Forces did deserve to die.
But, Bill, when I'm talking about racism, I'm not talking about justifying the point of view of the warlords and their armies. I'm saying that if you take a movie like Saving Private Ryan, that movie was clearly on the side of the Americans, and yet it showed you the psychology of some of the Nazis. In no way...
Very little, though. Very little. They rolled into town, and they shot it up with the Americans.
Enough to say that even the Nazis, in their misguidedness, were human beings. The problem that I have with Black Hawk Down is that, not that it doesn't take the side of the Somalis, it shouldn't do that.
You wanted
but
more
that
context.
It doesn't even acknowledge that these people are human.
All right.
They are just
I'll
creatures
take
in
your
a video
criticism
game.
as far as bad filmmaking. I will not take it as far as racism. I do not believe this is an anti-black screed.
I think that in a serious war movie, and Black Hawk Down is a serious film, you cannot separate drama and morality. I think the two are intertwined in a war film.
Yeah, but the morality is on the side of America and the United Nations. It is not on the side of the Somali warlords who picked up guns against us. It's simply not there.
And I say that a 2.5-hour movie that doesn't have 30 seconds to show the point of view of the enemy, even if the enemy is wrong, is taking away from their humanity.
Maybe it's taking away from their humanity, such as it is, but I don't know if it's racist. But we'll let the audience decide. Mr. Gleeman, thanks for coming in. We appreciate your point of view.
Thank you, Bill.
Next on the rundown, fanatics versus moderates in the Muslim world. Who'll win that struggle? And later, we'll debrief Geraldo Rivera. He's back from Afghanistan. I hope he wears the hat in here right now.
It seems like only yesterday. When I started skating at 8 years old, I never thought I'd experience the thrill of winning a medal. With all the great memories has come another thing I thought I'd never experience, the pain of osteoarthritis.
Vioxx is here, a prescription medicine for osteoarthritis pain. With one little pill a day, Vioxx can provide powerful 24-hour relief. Vioxx specifically targets only the COX-2 enzyme, a key source of arthritis pain. People with allergic reactions such as asthma to aspirin or other arthritis medicines should not take Vioxx. In rare cases, serious stomach problems such as bleeding can occur without warning. Tell your doctor if you have liver or kidney problems. For more information, talk to your doctor about once daily Vioxx for the relief of osteoarthritis pain.
Perhaps my biggest victory is to be able to plan my day around my life instead of my pain.
Ask your doctor if Vioxx is right for you. Vioxx for everyday victories.
The Impact segment tonight, it is completely understandable for Americans to have a rather dim view of the Muslim world these days. Pictures like these immediately after 9/11 are burned into our minds, pardon the pun. And the Arab press has been generally dismal in providing fair and balanced coverage of the war on terror. Joining us now from Seattle is journalist Mona Etahawi, who says Muslims must take a hard look at themselves. That's for sure. You know, we've had a few incidents, one over the weekend, where mosques have been attacked, and you know, you're always going to have this crazy stuff go on where people take it over. But I have to tell you that, you know, my view of the world now has changed. Where I was neutral on the Muslim world, I'm now kind of tilted against the Muslim world. Am I wrong?
Well, Bill, I think there's probably two main reasons for that. One, of course, is the aftermath of September the 11th, and you being an American and these terrible things that happened, it's understandable that you feel that way. But I think also the second reason is that Muslims haven't done enough to speak out for themselves and to say, hey, you know what? Osama bin Laden doesn't represent us. He represents a tiny minority of Muslims. There are 1.6 billion Muslims worldwide, and he happens to represent the most fanatical fringe element of this community.
But there seems to be a prevailing thought throughout the Muslim world that America owes Muslims something. And I don't believe we owe you guys anything at all.
Well,
Zero.
Bill, I think that's a completely different political discussion, and I can't claim to be speaking for the entire Muslim world. But
I think you can speak to the issue in the sense that there's in Egypt and in Saudi Arabia, in Kuwait, in a lot of these countries, and even American Muslims, a large majority of them, and I agree with you, most people don't think most Muslims don't think Osama bin Laden is, you know, the guy to emulate. But there is this thought that America owes the Muslim world something. We don't owe them anything.
Well, Bill, you know where that comes from, because there's been tons of discussions on how the American government does support corrupt dictators in the Muslim and Arab world, how the American government knows that these dictators play the fundamentalists against the liberals in those countries, yet does nothing about it.
Ms. Altaway, look, it's since the dawn of civilization, there has not been democracy in the Arab world, all right? Never. It hasn't been there. We do business with these people. We don't support them. We do business with them.
Well, of course you support them by doing
Russia
business
does,
with them,
as China does, as Western Europe does, as every other industrialized country do. What are we supposed to do? Go in and impose democracy in Algeria?
No, but at the same time, when you do business with those people, you are supporting them, and that you're not sitting down and saying,
we do business with everybody. We do business with everybody.
Well, you have people in America who say that America should re-examine its relationship with China, for example, because of its dismal human rights record.
But it's insane. You can't do that in a global economy. You can't pick and choose.
Then how do you turn around then and talk to those same leaders and tell them, you know what, you're responsible for these radicals in your country? How do you hold them responsible for one thing and not for another?
Here's how you do it. If the radicalism goes out of the border and influences the United States, i.e. an attack, we're going to hold the people responsible who do the attack. That's the government of Afghanistan's responsibility to control those people.
But at the same time, you're giving a tacit signal to these governments that what they're doing is okay, because
we don't send any signals at all. We couldn't care less about what happens in Afghanistan.
No. When you give the Egyptian government, you know, billions of dollars of aid every year, when you spend tons of money on oil from Saudi Arabia, when you do all those things, and you know very well about the human rights abuses that happen in those countries, and you know that those countries
but we can't do anything about that.
Radicals, then what kind of message is that sending out to the Muslim world?
Look, the message is, here's the message. Here's the message. Take care of your own government. If you don't like your government, get rid of it.
Well, you know
it's not our responsibility to make the Saudis behave like human beings. We can't do that. We can buy the oil because we need it. That's all we can do.
Nobody in the Muslim world has told the U.S. government, come here and get rid of the government for us. But all the people in the Muslim world are saying is, don't use double standards. Don't come and give all this money to our government and then turn around and say, hey, what's wrong with your people? Why aren't you doing anything?
Well, who are we supposed to give it to? If we don't listen, all of the aid that not all, but 90% of it is humanitarian aid.
No, I disagree. It's not.
Yes, it is. It's earmarked for the poor people.
If you look at the aid that goes, for example, to the Egyptian government, it's not humanitarian aid. It's largely military aid. I tell you that the Egyptian people hardly see a cent of that aid that goes to the Egyptian government.
I agree with that. But see, what we're trying to do is foster governments that are stable. If Mubarak is going to try to make peace between the Palestinians and the Israelis, we're going to support Mubarak. But we can't regulate what Mubarak does within his own country. I'll give you the last word.
You also have the right to tell those governments, you know what, we see your lack of democracy and your human rights records that needs improvement, and you can sit down on the table with them and tell them
all they want, but they're not going to listen to us.
Yes,
listen, you know as well as I do.
To them. If you want people in the Middle East or the Muslim world to do things against their government, at least let them know that the United States, which does like to look at itself as the policeman of the world, or does look like is the only superpower left, at least let those people know that America sees that they are trying to struggle for a democracy in their country, and that America does hold their government responsible, or at least to record, and says, you know what, we see the State Department issues human rights records on every single country in the world. Does it actually sit down with those countries and says, you know what, your record needs improvement?
Listen, I don't know if it sits down or not, and I hope it does. I'm with you there, but I'll tell you one thing. It ain't going to matter. Those despots over there are going to do what they want to do, and we can't stop them. And if we don't do business with them, it just makes the whole situation in the world worse. Ms. Hadaway, we appreciate you coming on. Thanks very much. And next, why is the FBI so screwed up? Then, the Philadelphia schools are a disaster. How did that happen? Those reports after these messages.
Everyday heroes aren't larger than life. They aren't granted special powers or amazing talents. Everyday heroes are ordinary people who find themselves in extraordinary circumstances and define the moment by showing their true colors. They aren't born. they blossom. Here's to everyday heroes.
The new 255 horsepower Nissan Maxima.
Look, you said you were sending the check last week. This thing is 90 days past due. What's the story?
This is the daycare center. Your check for last week was returned, and,
I'm afraid they've asked us to keep your credit card. I'm sorry, but...
The man at the grocery store says we can't.
We're here to pick up a TV set, serial number
They
X71.
wouldn't take my check at the cleaners.
When you can't pay your bills, there is a way out.
Call Solutions today. 1-800-634-2227.
At the Porterhouse Restaurant, good food and good fun come together. Many restaurants have good food, but the Porterhouse Restaurant combines it with a fun, friendly atmosphere. So come in and enjoy a night out. From karaoke to the newest ITS golf game, you'll never get bored at the Porterhouse. When your meal is ready, you can enjoy outside dining next to the waterfall, or relax and watch the game in our sports bar. Good food and good fun at the Porterhouse Restaurant on McLaughlin, south of the Bomber, across from the Oak Grove Fred Meyer.
In the Unresolved Problems segment tonight, the declining image of the FBI. Right now, the Bureau is charged with allowing 2 Boston criminals to commit murder while being on the FBI payroll. In the same case, an innocent man was incarcerated for decades, all with the FBI's knowledge. The Bureau was unable to obtain a wiretap on Zacharias Moussaoui, who was taken into custody 2 weeks before 9/11. Moussaoui is now charged with being in on the terror attack. The FBI also failed to shut down terror fundraising organizations such as the Holy Land Foundation based in Arizona. And no arrests have been made yet in the anthrax case. Joining us now from Dallas is the former Associate Deputy Director of the FBI, Oliver Buck Revelle. Pretty grim, pretty, you know, and I could have given you 10 more, Mr. Revelle. How could this happen? How could Efren Zimbalist Jr.'s Bureau, okay, we're all Americans in the 60s and 70s, 100% confidence, have fallen upon such hard times?
Well, I think each of those cases that you mentioned, except the Moussaoui case, which I take substantial difference with you on, represented a very distinct aberration and was not the organization, but very small number of people within the organization that ran afoul. Certainly the Boston case, that was true. I don't know of any FBI official or agent who doesn't believe that that situation deserves to be dealt with in the most severe terms. In the case with Zacharias Moussaoui, Bill, I think you're absolutely wrong. On that case, the FBI received a call. They reacted to that call that same day. They went out and interviewed Mr. Moussaoui. They then went to INS and had him detained on immigration violations because they weren't satisfied with the answers and the circumstances. They pursued every legitimate avenue open to them, and in fact,
yeah, you know what they didn't do, Mr. Revelle? And listen, I think the Minneapolis branch of the FBI did a magnificent job, and I agree with you 100% about that. But once it got to Washington, and once Janet Reno's Justice Department said, we can't give you a wiretap to go in, we can't monitor his phone records or his computer records because there's no evidence of a crime. Once that happened, the FBI should have gone public with it. And therein lies the problem. Louis Freeh and all of these guys are political appointees. They're not looking out for the folks. They're not looking out for Americans. They're looking out for themselves. And it gets buried under a layer of bureaucracy, and you know it. A lot of these things American people don't even know about. Nobody even heard of Zacharias Moussaoui when that happened, okay? It was buried. It wasn't a press conference. It wasn't, this is a dangerous guy. It was swept under the rug, and nobody knew about it.
Well, that's not accurate either, because one, Janet Reno and Louis Freeh were both gone before this event
I said
occurred.
Janet Reno's Justice Department.
Okay.
The remnants of Janet Reno knew what she was doing, okay? She sat there like a wooden statue for 5 years. But the people she had in place were very, very hostile to any investigation about terrorism. Look at the Holy Land Fund, okay? Look at that. What happened there?
The Holy Land Foundation, the investigation went forward, and the Treasury Department, Office of Foreign Assets, made the decision on when to seize those assets. That is the way the law is set up. There was no criminal charge in that. It was a matter of an administrative process of which the Bureau simply provided the information to...
But, Mr. Revelle, that's just my point. In 1993, the Bureau told President Clinton and Janet Reno that this organization, the Holy Land Foundation in Arizona, was funneling money to Hamas and possibly Hezbollah and others, okay? It sat there for 8 years because Janet Reno, according to FBI insiders, didn't want to investigate it because it might profile Arabs. It might put them in a bad light, another politically correct, insane decision. Well, Louis Freeh sat there all throughout the Clinton years saying nothing. He's a mummy. He's looking out for himself rather than bringing all these things to the media, to the attention of the public so something could be done. That's the fact. That's what happened to the FBI. Politicism at the top and no courage of conviction.
Well, let's take a look at the bombing of the Khobar Towers, and the FBI, including Louis Freeh himself, went head-to-head with the State Department and finally with Saudi Arabia itself to get support in that investigation. The FBI, in going over to investigate the USS Cole, the American ambassador there put obstacles in their way, and they waded through those obstacles and made substantial progress in that investigation. The case in the Moussaoui, the difficulty is that before September 11th, each case was looked at from a litigation standpoint rather than from a prevention standpoint, from an intelligence standpoint.
A national security standpoint.
And that has to take place, and I agree with you 100%. They should have sequestered that laptop. They should have reviewed it for intelligence, and then if there was a problem on the proof of the case, that was sequestered, and you could have gone ahead with any...
Mr. Revelle, all I'm saying is, and I think you agree with me here, the problems with the FBI are the politicalization of the agency. Well, that's the problem. Well, the pros aren't in charge anymore.
Well, there is a pro in charge now. Bob Mueller is a career prosecutor.
We'll see how he does. All right, Mr. Revelle, thanks very much. We appreciate it. Plenty more ahead as the factor moves along. State of Pennsylvania taking over the schools, and Geraldo will be here.
No time for a splitting headache, so I took control fast with Advil Liquid Gels. Tylenol's no match on tough pain. Advil Liquid Gels are faster and stronger.
You have the strength to get rid of pain fast. Take control. Take Advil.
Now, the same Caltrate that helps fight bone loss may help your colon, too. In a recent study, Caltrate helped reduce the risk of recurrence of colon polyps, a risk factor for colon cancer. The same Caltrate you take for your bones, now for colon health, too.
Okay, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, that's our loan package. Any questions?
Applying for a second mortgage to consolidate bills doesn't have to be difficult or time-consuming.
Excuse us.
Just log on or call Ditech.com and apply for a second mortgage with a no closing cost option. It's fast and easy.
Oh, lost another loan to Ditech.
Apply online or call us now at 1-800-71-FIX.
Your pet's exact same heartworm and flea medications delivered to your door for less than you're paying now.
It costs less than buying from my veterinarian.
Took less than 5 minutes to order. You don't have to make an appointment. You don't have to miss work.
Now I call PetMeds and get my pet's heartworm medication delivered right to my door.
The exact same flea and tick medications you get from your vet.
Only they're cheaper.
PetMeds. We deliver savings and convenience on HeartGuard, Advantage, Frontline, and all other pet medications. Call to order now or order online.
Tonight on Special Report with Britt Hume, humanitarian aid in Afghanistan. Are American efforts really helping? Government experts offer up some food for thought. Plus, from funding the war to stimulating the economy, Washington heavyweights brace themselves for a capital battle. Don't miss a minute. Tonight on Special Report with Britt Hume. Tonight, he's the guy who gave you the bottom line from the front line. Geraldo Rivera shares a correspondent's war stories from Afghanistan. Tonight on Your World with Neil Cavuto.
In the second Unresolved Problems segment tonight, the collapse of the Philadelphia public school system. Right now, 60% of the 200,000 kids there are below basic in reading and math. So the state is handing the schools over to a for-profit corporation, Edison. Joining us now from Boston is Dr. Pedro Noguera, a professor at Harvard and author of the upcoming book, Confronting the Urban, How Schools Can Respond to the Forces of Social Inequality. All right, why, doctor, are many, many schools, not just in Philadelphia, public schools failing? Is there one thing you can point to?
Well, I'd point to three things, and I just want to point out that it's really a national problem, certainly not limited to Philadelphia, but is true throughout the country in many inner city, but also in many rural areas. And the three things, and they're all related. First is poverty. The fact is that schools like Philadelphia serve the poorest kids. And many of the needs that those kids come to school with are not educational. You have lots of kids come to school who are hungry, who don't have stable housing, who haven't seen a dentist or an eye doctor, and all of those conditions affect their ability to learn. And the simple fact is that schools cannot address those issues and those needs on their own and need a lot more support. The second factor is that urban school districts throughout the country are in a state of disorganization where there's a very high turnover in superintendents, among superintendents, where they're typically a very politicized school board, and where unions often contribute to a kind of paralysis that affects many of these districts. And the third issue is really the basic educational issue, is that the schools simply lack a highly skilled and competent teaching staff, because many of these districts have a very high turnover in teachers.
All right, but with all the money that we're putting in, almost $70 billion a year, 50% more than at 1990, with all of the money going into the public school system here, there seems to be, to me, if I were running things, I could have oasis schools in the middle of bad neighborhoods. I could give you, you know, the doctor, the dentist, the eye doctor, the calm environment with the amount of money that is being provided by state, local, and federal authorities here. Now, I believe most of that money is being ripped off and never getting to the children. Am I wrong?
Well, the good news is that there are many successful schools in high-poverty areas. Education Trust, which is a national organization based in Washington, D.C., has identified 4,500 high-poverty schools across the country that are high-performing, that is, perform
All right, that's
at the
great,
highest
but
levels.
the bad news is that the state has to take over Philadelphia because 1 out of 8 junior in high school can read a newspaper. I mean, that's condemning these kids to poverty. But you didn't answer my question. $70 billion a year is going into the public school systems. I think most of it's being ripped off. Am I wrong?
I think it's more complicated than being ripped off, because if that were the case, we could just do a criminal investigation and stop it.
Well, who's investigating it, though? Nobody.
Well,
There's no apparatus to investigate fraud in the school system and theft in the schools. There's no apparatus at all.
Well, in fact, the only time when the state usually intervenes in a school district is when there's fiscal mismanagement.
Yeah, and that's when it becomes so blatant, like in Dade County, Florida, where they're actually, you know, stuffing money in their pockets and somebody sees them. But there's no government agency at the federal level that watches Title I money. Not one.
I think the problem is more complicated than that. I think that many people are doing their job. It's just that they're doing their job poorly. And it's just that whether or not kids are being educated simply does not matter with respect to how the system works.
Right. They just want to get these kids through and warehouse.
That's right. And
now look,
gets paid.
It seems to me with $70 billion a year, you can have oasis. I call them oasis schools. Schools that are set up to deal with the poverty problems and the terrible problems that these children have to encounter with irresponsible parents or parents that, you know, can't handle or whatever. Now, that doesn't seem to be pie in the sky for me, but I'm not seeing it being done. Is it possible?
Well, it is being done. I'll give you an example. Houston, Texas, is a district that is performing quite well. It's actually almost as large as Philadelphia. And according to the state of Texas, and I think they have pretty reliable data, most of the schools in the city of Houston are performing pretty well.
And that's why the former chancellor was made, you know, Secretary of Education.
That's right.
If they can do it there, they should be able to do it everywhere.
And they're doing it in Sacramento, and they're doing it in Charlotte. So the point is that it can be done, but it does take stronger leadership than we're seeing in most districts.
That's for sure, Doctor. All right, thanks very much. We appreciate your point of view.
Thank you.
Next on the rundown, Geraldo Rivera back from the battlefield. He'll be here in a moment.
Fox News Live, I'm Kiran Chetri. U.S. forces in Afghanistan continue their hunt for the Taliban's top man, Mullah Omar. Fox's Dan Springer reports.
There are conflicting reports on the whereabouts of Mullah Omar. One Afghan official says the surrender talks are at a crucial point, and those talks do include the handover of the Taliban leader. But other reports indicate that Omar is long gone from the Baghran area. That's the remote mountainous area where some 1,500 Taliban soldiers have been hiding since December 7th, when the Taliban surrendered Kandahar. U.S. officials doubt that Omar would give himself up. However, an Afghan official says he is in negotiations with tribal leaders who claim to be sheltering Omar, and the official says he expects a breakthrough soon. Meanwhile, the lone Taliban foreign minister, Abdul Zaif, was arrested today by Pakistani officials, and according to sources, he was turned over to the U.S. for questioning in Peshawar. Zaif has been living in Islamabad seeking political asylum for himself and his family. U.S. warplanes revisited a site of near constant bombings and bombed again today. Pentagon officials say the planes attacked a fairly extensive al-Qaeda compound in Kabul. I'm Dan Springer, Fox News.
We'll be back at the top of the hour.
Want to rearrange the living room? Dust behind that chest? How about move that king-size bed? Better get some moving men. No, not those moving men. These moving men. Introducing the moving men. The furniture sliders that make moving even the largest furniture child's play. Just slip a moving man under each leg, and even the heaviest piece slides along effortlessly. Each moving man is made of a highly polished polymer and fitted with a special grip pad for the legs to rest on. Even this loaded bookcase practically floats along. These men can hardly budge this armoire, yet this 90-pound woman can slide it clear across the room. We placed this wooden freight skid on 4 moving men with these heavy cinder blocks. It slides along like magic. This couple rearranged their living room in just a few minutes. They even used it to move that big screen TV. And now you don't have to bother your friends just to clean behind the bed. Sliding furniture without the moving men can bunch up and even damage expensive carpeting. The moving men are guaranteed. If they're not the best helpers you've ever had, send them back for a full refund. You get a set of 4 moving men for just $19.99. And if you call right now, we'll double your order. That's 8 moving men for less than $10 a set. But that's not all. We'll also include 8 mini movers. Put them under the washer and dryer, or anything you frequently move for cleaning. Watch. Here's one more incredible demo. It could take you hours to move your entertainment system. But why take it apart when you can move it all at once? Order now and get it all. That's 8 jumbo moving men and the 8 mini movers for just $19.99. So stop straining your back and let the moving men professionally move that heavy furniture. Call now.
To order the amazing moving men for only $19.99 plus shipping, have your credit card ready and call 1-800-842-0463 or send check or money order to the address on your screen. Call now.
Thanks for staying with us. And Bill O'Reilly in a personal story segment tonight. Fox News correspondent Geraldo Rivera just back from Afghanistan. Of course, Geraldo couldn't just go over there and report. All hell had to break loose, and it did. So what happened with this friendly fire story?
What happened is that I made an honest mistake, and a really weak-kneed, backstabbing, sweaty-palmed reporter from a minor newspaper used it as a platform to attack me.
Should he have not reported the story?
Well, I think he should have gotten the whole story, and then he could have reported it. It would have been a very boring story. If it were any other correspondent, Bill, any other correspondent over there, this would not have been a story. It was only the fact that they were, you know, I had a bullseye. I've always had a bullseye painted right on my backside. Particularly with my colleagues, I've had a strange relationship, a dichotomy. With my colleagues and peers over 32 years, an unblemished career. I mean, I've done some things that I'm not particularly proud of. Opened Al Capone's vaults and got my nose broken in a brawl. But never, ever has there been any charge that I faked anything. And to have this, and really, I only got the full impact of it. Remember, I came home from Afghanistan after 32 days. Arguably, Greg Hart, my team, they call them the Fox Patrol, and I were closer to the action than any news team over there, print or broadcast.
All right. Now, how did you get confused? I mean, what was because you did it on our program, on The Factor here. That's how you got in trouble. You basically said that you were around.
You're such a popular guy with these guys.
Yeah, I mean, you basically said that you were on the same ground where the...
hallowed ground.
Yeah, 3 Americans got killed by friendly fire.
I didn't say that. I said I was on hallowed ground where a friendly fire incident had happened.
All right, so you didn't say that they were Americans that got killed on it.
There were 2
separate issues.
Separate, near simultaneous friendly fire tragedies on or about the 6th of December. One happened in the western part of the country, the other happened where I was in the eastern part of the country. On the ground in combat, you don't have the same kind of access to Associated Press wires and the same flow of information. So we only got the fragmentary reports that the tragedy had happened, that 3 of our guys had been killed, along with a couple of the Mujahideen, the Afghans, 19 of ours wounded, plus an unspecified number of Afghan resistance fighters wounded. I had just been told by 2 Afghans that a terrible tragedy had just happened, that at least 2 of their people had just been killed by an American bomb. That was the night of the 5th. The morning of the 6th, I went there. I walked the hallowed ground.
This is in Tora Bora.
In Tora Bora. I saw the fragments of uniforms, the boots, with the feet still in them, that kind of stuff.
But you thought they were Americans who were killed at that point?
I didn't know who it was,
okay.
And I was specifically vague because I didn't know who. I had no idea who specifically of our forces had died there, of our guys.
So the guy from the Baltimore Sun obviously thought you were talking about Americans when you were in Tora Bora, and that's
I don't think he cared to know what I was talking about. I think that he was so gleeful. Here's a guy who never covered combat, who admitted to me that he had never watched me on Fox News, had never seen any of my reports until he got a tip that I had made this fake report. I mean, imagine standing in Tora Bora and pretending you were in Kandahar. I mean, it says Tora Bora on the screen.
Yeah, it didn't make any sense.
I mean, it didn't make any sense.
All right, so you basically got confused about who was killed where.
Right.
Okay. All right. That's fine. And Fox is going to check it out. Will they have some little panel? Are they going to convene? Or
they've already gone through all of the video. The video is all corroborates everything I've said. And the reason I wanted to come on before I go back into the field was to let people know that this never happened. This was a false report. This was a lie. Whether it was intentional or clumsy reporting on the part of the TV critic, I don't know, but I have a feeling that the same kind of maliciousness that has characterized their view of me now in my 4th decade on television is consistent.
So what is all that? I mean, I get it too, you know that.
Of course you do.
Why? I mean, why? What is it?
Because we don't toe the line. We don't speak we're not the lemmings. You know, these are people who, I remember one time I went on a Jimmy Carter press tour of South America, quick story. And I remember one night in Brasilia, the capital, the then new capital of Brazil, an AP reporter went running through the hallways, the lead is Amy Carter, the lead is Amy Carter. And everyone's dutifully following, okay, the lead is Amy Carter. They're petrified that they're going to get out of step with the mass of the profession. You and I have made our mark by being our own, marching to the beat of our own drummer, being our own.
But why is it so personal with this, especially the print press? You know, I mean, there's cattiness among the broadcast press.
No, well, I think that generally speaking, you're correct, and the print press is much more venal. However, Aaron Brown at CNN went out of his way to make a story.
I saw that. I mean, look,
out of his way.
You think so? I saw what he did.
This is a guy who would poop in his pants if he was anywhere near what I was near in Afghanistan.
Well, I saw it, and all I saw him do was basically lift his eyebrow up. In the sense
it was more than that. He said, we thought long and hard before we presented this report, but it goes to the very essence of what.
Yeah, he was trying to justify it so he wouldn't be accused. But look, do you really think that Aaron Brown cares about what you do in Afghanistan? He doesn't.
No, Aaron Brown cared. No, Aaron Brown cared about the fact that I was opposite him the weekend before, Saturday and Sunday night, kicked his butt. That's what he cared about. He cared about undercutting a competitor who is threatening their entire franchise over there. CNN is over.
Now, you would think that the print press would want people who, on television, who are flamboyant and provocative, because there are so many bland people. There are so many people who just, they're wallpaper. But whenever somebody arises who is different, Howard Cosell, or, in the history of broadcasting, you can name the names. You're certainly one of them. They go out of their way to try to destroy that. Even though they say, oh, we want creative programming, we want different programming.
My theory on that is that, unlike a theater critic in New York who can close a show, television critics are the least read columns in their newspapers. The only people who read television columns, generally speaking, are people in the business. When did a television columnist ever save a show or torpedo?
Do you think they're jealous?
I think there's a tremendous amount of jealousy, particularly when you see who they are. These are not, I don't want to... Again, I don't want to stroke our performance in Afghanistan. But if you look at the videotape, nobody got shot at more. No one got shelled more. Nobody was closer to the action than we were. And we presented an honest portrayal. It was patriotic, I admit. It was, you know, we did not make a moral equivalent of the of Osama bin Laden and us. We were clearly on the side of the United States in a war against terror. Fault me for that. That's okay. Fault me for being passionate. Fault me for being wearing patriotism on my sleeve in this instance. You can fault me for that. But don't say that I faked anything. I have never faked anything in my life. I was accused of it once in 1973 by the late lamented Roger Grimsby, and I had a fight with him that night, and I swear to God, I was filled with rage. I expected to come home to this country and have people patting me on the back and saying, nice job, you were in it with our boys over there, way to go. And instead I got all this flack, and it's in the, I still get the good kudos from the people in the street, but to get this kind of bad vibe and to make this a negative experience after leaving my cushy job in at CNBC is just more than I can bear.
All right, well, I'm sure you'll bear up under it.
Sure
No, it's not more than you can bear.
That's right.
You'll go back out there.
You need me to take on Sean.
You'll cause more trouble. We know it, and you'll be back here. All right. Nice to see you again.
Thanks.
We're glad you're back safe. And when we come back, a mother says her two daughters were kidnapped and taken to Saudi Arabia. Her story, and it's a chilling one, in just a few moments.
David Lee Miller, Great Mountain,
Amy Kellogg,
William Largeness,
Steve Harrigan, Fox News, Internet.
Ready for an experience that's out of this world? Come into Tony Roma's. Our reputation spans the globe, and we're famous for doing whatever it takes to satisfy your craving for the true flavor of the grill. Like the new Ultimate Roma Feast. Flame grilled ribs, barbecue chicken, smoked sausage, corn on the cob, and coleslaw. All at a special price right now.
Whatever it takes to make it great.
Hi, I'm Rick from Empire Glass. Let Empire Glass replace your cracked windshield and will now pay up to $100 of your comprehensive insurance deductible. And will now give you 24 free dinners to Sherry's, the Northwest's #1 family restaurant and bakery, with any windshield replacement. So for the highest in quality windshields, including up to $100 off your comprehensive deductible and 24 free dinners to Sherry's, call Empire Glass today at 251-9881. When you think glass, think Empire.
How can VHIX.com help you decide on what vehicle to buy? With smart, thorough, unbiased, up-to-date research. And if you're trying to decide between a couple of different vehicles, at VHIX.com, you can compare them. Side by side, head to head, feature by feature, option by option, dollar for dollar. Try the side-by-side comparison at VHIX.com. It's your roadmap to the automotive world.
Hi, Pam Paulette at City Liquidators Furniture Warehouse, where you'll find a huge selection of carpets and rugs on our second floor. Not to mention our Mission collection. Just like the fancy stores, the only difference is the price. Like this Mission computer room wall for $5.99, or this Mission Entertainment Center for $3.48. What about a Mission sofa at $5.99, or a 5-piece dining room for $7.88? And look at this great Sweetheart back sofa for $4.95. City Liquidators Furniture Warehouse, family-owned since 1977.
In the Back of the Book segment tonight, the sad saga of Pat Roush and her two daughters, Elia, 23, and Elisa, 19. In 1986, Miss Roush's estranged husband apparently kidnapped the girls, took them to Saudi Arabia, where they remain to this day. Joining us now from Sacramento is Pat Roush. This has been now 15 years, and your daughters are grown. And the United States government has really not been able to help you. It's astounding.
Yes, it is. The United States government has actually done everything they could to deflect and stop every done deal that I've had on the table with the Saudi Arabian government to have my daughters released.
All right, well, let's take it back to 1986. We had Ronald Reagan in the White House then, and Ronald Reagan didn't want to help you?
No, actually, it goes back to George Shultz before Ronald Reagan, when I had a done deal worked out with Senator Alan Dixon of Illinois, who was trying to get the Saudis to release the girls and had very good success. And they were going to be released 10 months after they were taken. And the State Department tied the hands of the U.S. Embassy in Riyadh to make the final
Why would they do that?
They told me, I asked them the same question, Bill, and they said that it was their policy and that if they did it for me, they'd have to do it for everyone. And I said, why not do it for everyone? And they said, well, we just can't.
All right. We must say that you were involved in a divorce action with your husband, former husband, who was a Saudi citizen.
A Saudi national.
He took the girls, and you still don't have them back. Now, all right, so you say Schultz, but again, that's Reagan. That's a Reagan administration. Then we had the Bush administration, and President Bush the elder, he didn't want to help you?
I've had hand-delivered letters to 3 U.S. presidents by senators and other people in higher places. This included President Reagan, Vice President Bush when he was vice president and president, and also Bill Clinton, twice from Ray Mabus, who was ambassador to Saudi Arabia from the U.S.
Did you hear from any of those men?
Yeah, well, I've got 3 letters signed by George Bush saying this is just too bad and I hope everything works out okay. But actually, I've gotten no action from any of the administrations.
And Bill Clinton?
Bill Clinton talked to Ray Mabus in the Oval Office twice about my case, and he told Ray Mabus that he would have someone look into it, but nothing ever happened. No.
All right. You know, and I hate to say this because you're not really, but you're a small fish to these men. I mean, it's, why raise a diplomatic incident with the Saudis? We need their oil, and all of that. Why create an incident? And that's the way they think. How are you going to cut through that and finally get to see your daughters?
Well, I don't want to see my daughters. I want my daughters to be able to come home. They're American citizens. It started when they were little girls, and now they're big girls. And as women, 19 and 23, now my eldest daughter has been married off. It's a life sentence because they're treated as Saudi women, not as American citizens. The U.S. State Department refuses to make this a state-to-state issue with the Saudi government. They're still treating it as a child custody matter, which it is no longer. I've worked long and hard in Washington for 16 years to have my daughters returned to me. I've been responsible for legislation and treaties being signed, which none of it has ever really helped me personally to get my daughters back, but it's helped a lot of other people.
Do you think your daughters want to come back to the United States?
The point is, my daughters have a right to come back to the United States. My daughter, Aisha, told me 2 months ago when I was finally able to get through to her after 6 years of not even talking to her, she said to me, and she speaks very little English, she said, "Hello, Mom, I love you, Mom. Come here, Mom, I love you, Mom." She's locked up with her father, who's got a terrible psychiatric record. She's locked up inside a villa with no rights. She cannot even go outside of the house.
Can you get a visa to go over to Saudi Arabia and see your daughters?
I can't go into Saudi Arabia to see my daughters. I saw my daughters once in 1995. I saw them once in 16 years, and it was a very orchestrated, very staged...
So the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia won't give you a visa to go?
The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia will not give me a visa to see my daughters, and under Saudi law, which the State Department goes along with, their father controls them, and now their husband. Without the permission of their father, who will not give permission, or their husband, or Alia's husband, I will not be able to see them. The State Department will not interject with the Saudi Arabian government. They told me their goal is for me to perhaps communicate with my daughters. What I'm asking is that my daughters be issued U.S. passports from the U.S. Embassy in Riyadh. They be given Saudi exit visas by the Saudi Arabian government, and guaranteed exit visas. Guaranteed.
Yeah, but that's not going to happen. Why would that happen after all these years? Do you think President Bush is going to get involved with that now?
You know something, Bill? These are the faces of the 19 men who blew up the World Trade Center. 15 of these faces are Saudi nationals, and yet the Saudi Arabian government has funded indirectly Al-Qaeda and directly
no, we know
the
all
Taliban.
That, though. Why would they be? Why would they change? Why would they? Why would?
Of the guy who took my kids as a Saudi national. You know what the U.S. government did for him? They let him into the United States 2 years after I had federal warrants, FBI warrants, and Interpol warrants for his arrest. They not only let him in, they let him in on a diplomatic.
All right, Ms. Rauch, I believe you, and I know what you're saying.
Why shouldn't they? Why shouldn't they?
We have a minute left. You said in the break to me, you think things are going to turn around, and I'm saying to myself, why? I mean, if the U.S. government in 15 years has not helped you, why would they finally do it now?
I think they have to do it now because the part my little girls being, my daughters now being small potatoes or little people are not even important in the scope of what's the grand scope of the political diplomatic scene that's happening right now. The United States relationship with Saudi Arabia concerning my daughters and concerning the Saudi American Special Alliance, it's one and the same problem. If they won't cooperate concerning my little girls, my adult girls, why should they cooperate with us on other matters?
So you are optimistic that you're finally going to get your daughters back to the United States?
I love my daughters, and I have faith in God, and I have a mission, and I'll never stop until my daughters are returned.
Ms. Roush, if we can do anything, let us know, and we certainly hope that that you get to see your daughters very soon.
Thank you, Bill.
And next, we'll wrap things up, the most ridiculous item of the day and some of your mail.
If this is what you sometimes call breakfast, remember one thing. You are what you eat. So next time, try something good. Nutri-Grain. With whole grain oats, real fruit, and calcium. Nutri-Grain. Respect yourself in the morning.
Do you need to know how to operate a computer? Hi, I'm John Scher, CEO and founder of Video Professor. You know, our product is quick, it's easy to learn with, and you can try it for free. You know, over the years, millions of people have learned how to operate their computer using my product. We get letters, happy letters, every day. People emailing us or writing us, thanking us. But the most rewarding thing for me is when people stop me on the street and tell me how easy it was for them to learn to run a computer using my product. If you just want to learn to run a computer once and for all, save yourself a lot of time and a lot of energy, try my product. Put your CD in the CD tray, the lesson plays right on your computer. It works just like a VCR, just follow the step-by-step instruction. I'm so confident my product will work for you, I'm going to send it to you absolutely free. The reason I'm going to do this is because I know that once you try my product, you'll come back to us for all your computer learning needs. So, it's simple. Try my product.
Call 1-800-359-9803.
As a boy, he witnessed a tragic crime. As a man, to break the chains of racism, he must turn in his own father. You know what happened that night?
Yeah, but what you ever do for me? I lied.
Tom Sizemore, Richard Jenkins, Ving Rhames. Sins of the Father. Coming in January to FX. Tonight, humanitarian aid in Afghanistan. Are American efforts really helping? Government experts offer up some food for thought. Tonight on Special Report with Britt Hume.
Time now for the most ridiculous item of the day. CNN loses one of its big guns, Greta Van Susteren, who will take over the 10 p.m. slot here on the Fox News channel. It's ridiculous for CNN, good for us, and we wish Miss Van Susteren much success here at the Fox News channel. Finally tonight, the mail about the homeless issue. Susan Goodson, Milwaukee, Oregon. Reverend Toole may be right in his assertion that we can't force values on the homeless. However, we can expect them to behave responsibly, and if they don't, the consequences of the law should be employed. J. Brian Lewis, Albuquerque, New Mexico. Bill, I couldn't help but notice that Reverend Toole would have us subsidize the homeless, but when confronted by your plan of enforced help, he stated that plan would infringe upon their rights. But whose freedoms are really in question here? Angela Snyder, Lancaster, Pennsylvania, call me crazy, but I don't consider watching public drunkenness, profanities, and the like a positive learning experience. Dirk Wieringa, Grand Haven, Michigan. Bill, the Reverend should be thanked for nurturing the homeless. Your solution is much too harsh. About the terrible behavior of the Rolling Stones. Cindy Parkhurst, Gibraltar, Michigan. O'Reilly, you are a crackpot. Osama bin Laden is evil, not the Rolling Stones. It's becoming more and more apparent you haven't a clue. Well, here's a clue for you, Ms. Parkhurst. Fathering children and then abandoning them is evil. Shooting up drugs in front of adolescents is evil. Get the sand out of your eyes. Martin Roulard, Canton, Michigan. Bill, even Mozart was no angel. Who are we to judge? Mario Cirillo, New York City. If we select our music based on the moral values of the musicians, all we'd listen to would be the Osmonds. Dean Jacques, Chester, Connecticut. The purpose of art is to ennoble humanity. The Rolling Stones are without moral restraint and should be condemned for what they are. As for you, O'Reilly, I find myself agreeing with you more and more, and I don't like it. Gene Youngs, Frazee, Minnesota. Bill, as a former military member, I agree with you that John Walker should go before a military tribunal. He's a Taliban soldier, not an American civilian. Philip Exline, in Newburgh, Indiana. Mr. O'Reilly, you are wrong on this one. Walker did not commit any war crime. Christine Peterson, Long Beach, California. Ellis Hennigan conceded the Justice Department was corrupt under Janet Reno, but you, O'Reilly, expect John Ashcroft to have cleaned it up in only a year. That's right, Ms. Peterson. Ashcroft should have cleaned the place up by now, and he hasn't. He's stonewalling on many important issues, just as Reno did. It's flat out wrong. Ian Brooks, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Bill, Sean Penn and George Clooney hate you. You must be doing something right. And William Rettinger, Tampa, Florida. I have some advice for Sean Penn. The Betty Ford Clinic. Whoa. That's pithy. How about that website? All right? My column is on the Justice Department. It's really bad. I mean, the Serino deal and now with John Ashcroft. So, for WorldNetDaily.com, my column is on the Justice Department. You can access it at www.foxnews.com/O'Reilly. And how about emailing us with some very pithy comments? O'Reilly@foxnews.com, O'Reilly@foxnews.com. Name and town, name and town, name and town if you wish to opine. We're getting back in the swing of things for the year 2002. Want to hear from everybody. And, you know, don't get discouraged if we don't use your letter. It's just luck. Keep sending them in, all right? That is it for us today. As always, thank you for watching. I'm Bill O'Reilly. Hope to see you again next time.